This is a winner pork schnitzel dinner. It is delicious, it is creamy, it is savory, it is tangy. You will go wild over this thing. A 10 out of 10, a must make. Come see how I did it. It is schnitzel time. We have our perfectly pounded pork. I take it to about like a centimeter thick. I don't like it super thin because I still like to be able to like taste the chew of the pork. And we are setting up our breading station. This is like cooking 101, knowing how to set up a breading station. We have flour as our first dredge. Then we have some eggs. That's going to be our wet. And then into some panko breadcrumbs or any kind of breadcrumbs that will be the actual breading. So this is your standard breading station. We are going to season all across all of these. You don't want to end up after you fried, you taste it and you're like, it's just underwhelming. You just taste oil and bread. We really want to make sure this is well seasoned. So we're going to take our salt and toss it all across every single step. We're going to get it right on the pork itself. We're going to add a nice pinch into our flour. We're going to add a good pinch into our eggs and then into our breadcrumbs as well. And then I'm going to do the same thing with some fresh black pepper and crack that into all of our stations. I like to do it all at once because it just ensures that I'm not missing any. And then we are taking a fun spin on this pork schnitzel and we're doing like an everything bagel seasoning spice to it. So most of that I'm going to put into the panko breadcrumbs at the end. So I'm going to take, I have about 1.5 cups of panko breadcrumbs here, and I'm taking a good like 1/4 cup of the everything bagel seasoning. I even have a little bit more because I want to make sure that it's really prominent, that when we toast it up, you really see those black poppy seeds and the sesame seeds. I want that flavor to come through. And it's going to add really fun, different flavor to this pork. So before I go, we got to whisk up our eggs really well. And this is enough breading. We could do like 4 to 6 pieces of pork for this. Now, when we go to bread, you want to try to keep one hand wet and one hand dry. It can be confusing and sometimes I mess it up. So we're just going to go into see what happens. So I'm going to grab, we go right into our flour. And then you want to make sure you shake off any excess. And now this one is going into our egg mixture. And now, since this one already had flour on it, I'm going to make this hand the wet hand so I don't get like clumpy fingers. I'm going to keep one hand that's at least usable. Same thing, let it kind of dip off and then into our breadcrumbs. I'm going to leave that for a second and we're going to do the other one. So into the flour. Shake it off. You don't want any big clumps of flour. Into the egg. Take your wet hand, coat it with the egg. Make sure it's fully coated. Again, let any excess drip off. And then we're going into those panko breadcrumbs. Now I'm going to use that dry hand again and start to toss these in that panko. Get everything covered. This, you can start to kind of pat it down into to make sure that we got all areas covered, all the surface area has some breadcrumbs on it, so that when we go to fry, it sticks. We get a super crispy pork chop. So I like to let these just hang out in the bowl while we're gonna get our oil heated and we can toast these off in the pan. We are going to fry these puppies up. So I'm taking some really neutral oil, a light colored oil, and adding that to our pan. We want that to get nice and hot. I want about almost a little less, a little under the thickness of what our pork is. We're gonna do a shallow fry on this, similar to when you're doing fried chicken. If you have a deep fryer, you totally can use a deep fryer, but it's just a little bit, most of us don't have deep fryers. So we're gonna do it in our pan, a nice shallow fry. I'm gonna put a little water in here and then I'm gonna kind of splash the oil and that'll tell me when my oil is ready. All right, so I'm starting to get some really good bubbles. You can tell that my oil is nice and hot. We're going to give our schnitzel one last kind of pat, make sure we're good. And then when we drop, we want to lay down away from us. We don't want to have the oil come towards us to be safe. So lay down, and that's why you lay away. And you need to remember, we have like seeds in here. Those sesame seeds are going to pop. So if you have one of those like screens, that would be a good thing to use. I don't have one of those. These are going to take only about 2 minutes per side, 4 minutes total. They're going to cook up really quick. That meat is super thin. We don't want dry pork schnitzel. We want perfectly golden brown, nice and juicy pork schnitzel. All right, these puppies are golden brown, ready to come out. We're going to transfer them right to a cooling rack. That's going to let any of the grease kind of fall through. If you just put them on a plate or on a pan, they're going to get really soggy, and we want to preserve all of that crispy crunchiness that we just made. So those are free to rest. I'm going to actually hit them with a little bit of salt right when they come out. And they will be ready for us when we are ready for them. Next up, we're going to make a creamy mustard sauce that's going to go over these and great for dipping. So I'm going to get rid of this excess oil, and we're going to come back and we're going to whip together that creamy mustard sauce. Comes together in like 2 minutes. We have our pan. We're going to make our creamy mustard sauce. I have our pan that we cooked the pork in, and I just poured the oil out, but I actually left some of the brown bits. I really like them. I think they kind of transfer over into the sauce. So I get rid of most of the oil, but I keep some of those brown toasty bits for the sauce. You don't have to. You can start with a perfectly clean pan. All we need for our mustard sauce, I'm not lying, is cream and mustard. We'll probably add some salt in there too, but 2 main ingredients is cream and mustard. So easy. We are going to put our cream into our pan, whisk it together. We already are getting like all that flavor from the pork that we just cooked in there. Brown food is flavor. So whenever I see it, I want to keep using it. I don't want to toss it out. So we're going to get this going at a simmer. And heavy cream in itself, it will thicken. And that's what's going to really just give us a consistency that we're looking for. And I'm going to add in our mustard. I have a whole grain Dijon mustard here. And I'm just going to gently whisk in. And then I'm also going to add in a pinch of salt to flavor that up. And this is going to cook down for about 4 to 5 minutes and thicken up into that super just kind of like spoonable, spreadable consistency that we want to put over our pork chops. All right, this sauce is done. It is reduced for a couple minutes, and it's a perfect like thick consistency. You still want it to be pourable. You don't want it to be like as thick as like a cheese sauce. And as it cools, it's going to thicken even more. So you want it to basically like coat. See how it's taking a while to fill the pan? That's how you know that it's ready. I'm going to put this into a little dish, and then we are going to saute up some cabbage and make this like sweet and sour cabbage. It is delicious and goes great with the pork. Time for some sauteed sweet and sour cabbage. This goes perfectly with our pork. Super easy, comes together in no time. We are going to take our cabbage and break it down. So again, can seem a little daunting to people. Really easy to cut up cabbage. There's also, cabbage is so good in both raw and cooked forms. I urge people to get on board with this thing. It is so good for you. It's so delicious. You just have to know how to use it. So we want to get rid of this inner part of the cabbage. So we need to take it and we need to cut this part out. So I'm going to cut into it right there, cut into it right there, and then we take the root out of it. All right, and now I'm going to cut this in half so it's a little bit easier for us to manage. And then we just kind of want to shape it. We're going to go really small through that. Just try to get nice thin slices. Take your time with it. You can use a mandolin if you have one to shave down your cabbage, but you can just slowly run your knife through it. It helps to have a sharp knife. If your knife is dull, it's going to be a little bit harder to get through it. And then we're going to do the other side as well. You need about a half of a cabbage for this. The cabbage cooks down a lot. There's a lot of water in cabbage, so it's kind of like spinach or another vegetable like that. It cooks down a lot. So it looks like this is a ton of cabbage, and this will serve 2 people. We are also going to chop up an onion to go in this dish. I'm going to do kind of like a rough chop on this because we have the cabbage that is a little bit bigger. I don't want these super small. And then we are going to get some oil down on our pan and get these sauteing. Take our cabbage, take our onions. And this looks super full, like it looks like we have way too much in the pan. This is going to cook down so much and get so much smaller. So just kind of let it do its thing for a minute and then get your tongs out and start tossing it. I'm going to add in some salt. That's going to help to kind of pull out some of that water. And so we're going to salt this. Nice big pinches of salt. Some red pepper flakes as well. It adds just such great heat. Once this wilts down, so we're going to let this go another about 5 minutes. Then we're going to really tackle it with the kind of the sweet and sour portion of this. It's kind of like making a quick pickle. So we're like almost making a quick pickled cabbage. We're going to add in some apple cider vinegar and some honey. Regular sugar works fine here too. Maple syrup, agave, any sweetener, anything sugary, it's going to help just kind of like make that sweetness. It's also going to help caramelize the onions a little bit and make them kind of like not sticky, but it's just going to kind of like coat them a little bit and give them a really nice fresh sweetness to it. You can see too, as this cooks down, like we're getting a really bright purple color out of it. Guys, I'm like a cabbage junkie. Like raw and shaved in salads, cabbage is so good because it stays so crisp. It tastes so good with like a fresh like vinaigrette dressing on it. I also love it as you can just take the rest of this and just cut it in half and then roast it in the oven or sear it on a cast iron pan or on your grill in the summer. They char up so nicely. And again, just absorb any kind of flavors that you put onto them. There's such a blank canvas. And as a vegetable, it's really nice because some vegetables, when you grill them or put them under high heat, they just kind of like melt away and lose all their texture. Cabbage maintains its texture. So you get that like cooked, really roasted, charry taste, and you still have a little bit of bite to it. It's just like a great meat alternative, just a fun way to play around in the kitchen. So go get yourselves a couple heads of cabbage, red, green, whatever you can find at your store, and just play around with it. They're a great side dish to holiday menus, to roast those up and do just all different flavor profiles on them. They work really well in Asian dishes. Some soy sauce, some fish sauce goes really well against that bitterness of the cabbage. Google it. The list goes on and on. I should just do a series on cabbage. It's really what we're getting at, a cabbage series. All right, so I'm going to add in the vinegar first. It's almost going to kind of deglaze the pan and get this like really kind of like pungent vinegariness going. So I'm going to add that in. Let that go for a second. Oh, and it smells so good as soon as that hits. And then you can watch the color almost change instantly. It turns like a magenta pink. Just kind of like when you pickle red onions. It turns to that really bright pink color. It's so pretty. I'm going to crank the heat a bit so we can get this bubbling and reducing. And then I'm going to put in our honey. I'm going to squeeze in probably about 2 tablespoons of honey. 2 big squeezes. Again, this cabbage can take on so much flavor, so don't be shy when you're adding in your seasonings. I'm going to mix that around. And then finally, I'm going to kind of piggyback off what we did before, and we're going to add in some of that mustard. Again, we're really trying to layer flavors. So we use that creamy mustard sauce that we're going to put on our pork, and I want to add a little bit into this dish as well. It just helps the whole dish become cohesive and become one. So a little bit of mustard. And then I'm going to let all this liquid reduce out. So I really want us to reduce this down. It's going to take a couple minutes just steaming away, and then this will be ready to serve up under our pork. We are ready to plate up this delicious pork schnitzel. So I'm going to take a bit of the cabbage. We're just going to lay it right in the center of our plate. It's going to act as like a base for our pork. We're going to add our pork right over top. I like to add a little bit more of the cabbage on top of the pork. Just kind of makes a little sandwich of cabbage. And then we're going to take this creamy mustard sauce and drizzle it all over. It is just so yummy. I also like to serve this like in a bowl alongside because I just want to keep biting into it. It is a beautiful plate. It is so delicious, so crispy, so crunchy. You are going to love this. Looks so good. You can tell the pork is like perfectly cooked. It still has like that slight pinkness in the middle and juicy. I'm going to get a little bit of everything on this bite. That is too darn good. I pat myself in the back. It is so awesome. It's so balanced. That is the best part about it. When you think like schnitzel and that fry, it's so well balanced with the acidity from the cabbage, but also the tanginess from the mustard sauce. But then it also like gets you on the back end with the cream. So it's just like hitting all the right notes. You got all the texture, all the flavors. It's just like a perfectly well-rounded dish. Crowd pleaser. This is like one to show off your skills and like bang people out with some amazing, amazing flavor. Gotta try this one. This is hands down 10 out of 10. One of the best things I've ever made.